welcome to the press group also. We have been joined by actually journalists from France, from Belgium, from UK, from Germany, who have now joined. We've lost a few who have left to living places. Some come, some go. Building on the previous presentation, which I'm afraid you didn't catch, but we were talking about frameworks, metrics, and benchmarks and weightings of how we address both the climate change we're going through, but also the biodiversity crisis. That's all. So big task, and that's what we're trying to sort of coin here today by opening the opening questions. We're not saying that we have the solutions, but we think this is the right crowd and the right circle to start the ripple, the first drop of the ripple, with which we can expand, and that you do with the top 1%, which is you. So I'm happy to welcome you to the panel, to talking about how to recover, regenerate, and renew Europe's existing buildings, and US, of course, Joe, so that they are healthy, affordable, and sustainable, both now and for generations to come. And as a backdrop, we use the European Commission's Affordable Housing Plan, which is a key part of the conversation, but it's also a global challenge that addresses how can we retrofit at scale, share the solutions, and ensure that the health of both people and planet is at the heart of every decision. And the backdrop is that the current Commissioner for Housing and Energy, he's Danish, that's a coincidence, but he has called a hearing period, which is running for one more month, where he's asking for input to the future housing plan. And we thought, what better occasion than the one where you are here today, than to gather these inputs from capacities, the best capacities on the topic. And we would actually then, at the end, after our discussion here, we would come back to the top 3 recommendations that we will then nail and put into the hearing for the housing plan. So the overall question is, how do we close the renovation gap and ensure healthier, climate-resilient buildings become the norm rather than the exception? And that is maybe accelerate renovation rates, embed health into retrofit standards, and invest in climate adaptation measures. And we have academia, architects, engineers, and investors in the audience. So between you, you are actually able to cover the full. Get all the answers, yes. But I would like to introduce the panel, starting with Ditte, who is Science Officer at Bloxhub, and you run still the Circular Way, I think, your space, yes, your personal, so to say, development space. I supply to your newsletter, at least, and enjoy reading your articles. Marcel Schweiker, who's a full professor and head of healthy living spaces at RWTH Aachen.
Exactly.
Which is a university. Yes. And over to Joseph Allen, who is a professor and director of the Healthy Buildings program at Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. Yes. So I'd like to ask you all 3 an opening question. Take a quick round, top of mind. From your perspective, what does a truly future-proof building look like, and how do we balance the needs of health, affordability, and sustainability in that vision? Briefly. Should I ask Joe first, Ditte?
I can start.
Okay, good.
Maybe to start with inspiration from today and what like future-proofing. Tony said in her opening that this building was very much about seeing the future sort of embraced by the legacy and the past, and I think that there's a lot of innovation by remembrance, and the first key being the affordability piece. So now that there's the European Parliament, the Commissioner, everybody, even Ursula von der Leyen saying, hey, let's remember that first and foremost buildings is about people, and from there can be a lot of other things, but that's the core. Then transparency, that when we transform, that when we actually need to be able to transform that building again, we need to be able to repair that building again. So there's also a lot of innovation by remembrance in that. And then maybe more than anything, look towards how do we build with nature rather than against nature. I think if you look at it, there's been this tendency to see human ingenuity as moving as far away from the natural as possible. If we go the other way around and really look at how do we combine human ingenuity with the intelligence of nature and look towards bio-based materials, also bioengineering. We were in the board of the Royal Academy together, and it was there was a new build being built out in Novoland, and it was quite interesting to see from an academic perspective the Phil Iris, the professor working with mycelium, who just felt more extremely at home in Novoland, because from life science to food systems to built materials, there's not quite that far when we start looking at bioengineering and working with rather than against nature. So I think those are at least 3 core things.
Thank you. Very good observations, and also the synergy, the big synergy projects, combining what Kasper showed in his presentation, climate science and the earth sciences. Thank you for that. Can I move to you, Marcel, on the same question?
You just take a row.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely support the nature part. I think I will go back a bit to the human. For me, the future-proof building is based on the thinking of what we humans need. And I will not talk about IQ, but I think for me there are 3 concepts, and by chance they overlap with what Antonovsky said for salutogenic principles. I think we need to create buildings that people comprehend. They need to understand the buildings, what they should do with it, how they can live a comfortable life, a good life in these buildings. Coming with that together is they need to be able to manage the building. They need to manage their stimuli. They need to manage what they want to achieve. If they want to have comfort, if they want to have discomfort, if they want to have some exposure at time, I think giving people control over the buildings is very crucial. And by chance, I had this card from the previous session, skills at risk, skills we might risk. And I have the feeling we're risking the skill of understanding the buildings. We have more and more tendencies to put more automation inside, which people don't like because the automation still doesn't understand what people need. I think we need to go back and say, okay, what is a window handle? What can this do for you? How can we do this that you can manage with it? And then there's this third criteria from Antonovsky, which is meaning, showing people, okay, what is the building doing for you? How can it support your economic and your social life and your health, which is both or is part of the social life? And if we look at these 3 criteria you mentioned, I think it was affordability, sustainability, and what was the third one? Healthy, right? I shouldn't forget about that one. I think I wouldn't say they are so distinct to each other. If you can combine them in certain aspects. If something is affordable for you, we know that there's a big relationship between socioeconomic situation and the health of the people. So if I have less money I need to spend on energy for the building, I'm having the chance to grow up, to spend it on other things which would be more supportive for me. Social health is part of the social sustainability, is part of sustainability. Of course, we have also the economic sustainability. So affordability is also part of sustainability, and I wouldn't say it's different aspects. So I think it's very similar. The challenge is how we build it, but maybe we can get to that in a later round.
Okay, more specifically. Thank you. And yes, the window handle, recently I hosted a meeting with the Danish Association of Architects here in the building, and the chair, he was looking at the window saying, Oh, are you allowed to open them yourself? In a new building? Yeah. Yes, you are. Yeah. Control. Joe,
Yeah,
over
so
to you.
first, let me say it's really nice to be here with you, Lona, and everybody from VELUX and colleagues and collaborators. When I think about future-proofing, I think first we have to start with what's the target, right? What is the goal in the future? And I know we talk a lot about KPIs, but we were talking earlier this morning, something I've been writing about is HPIs for health performance indicators. And I think the language we use is important. So we know what key indicator we're chasing. Ultimately, I think it's health. Planetary health is human health. And then if you look at the health performance indicators across any dimension, you see they're declining or going in the wrong way. We can look at the true health performance indicators like asthma or neurodegenerative diseases or cancer going the wrong way. The environmental indicators are going the wrong way. I was spending a lot of time in Los Angeles with the devastating urban wildfires. We see heat waves, we see flooding, we see what's happening with the climate. So that's going in the wrong way. We see the social indicators going the wrong way. Loneliness epidemics. We see the lack of, or the fraying of the social fabric. So you have these indicators, and then I think the key switch for the public, not a surprise to people in this room, is that buildings are driving a lot of that, and therefore the solution. So if you think about future-proofing, it's not just we're future-proofing health, but ultimately driven through our buildings. And so the current problem and why we need to future-proof ultimately is that our buildings are not providing in the way they should be. In fact, we've been saying we're in the sick building era. We've designed sickness into our buildings. We've designed illness into the environment from our buildings. And so this is ultimately where the future-proofing has to come, is just a reframing of this. And I think without exaggeration, what we do with our buildings going forward represents probably the greatest public health opportunity we have. Thinking about everything else, it's all going to drive through our buildings, ultimately, these solutions. And I think about the future, I also think about the past. And I've been writing about Florence Nightingale in particular, and I love something she says, right? It says, cleanliness and fresh air from open windows, the only defense a true nurse either asks or needs. That's 150 years ago. So somewhere along the way we forgot, and we lost some of these lessons from the past in terms of our buildings. We ushered in this sick building era, and I think we have the responsibility. I think we're on that path to coming out of that towards a healthy buildings era.
That sounds very encouraging. I'd like to continue along that note, Joe. Before I do that, I'd like to encourage you to also ask questions. It would be a strange day where journalists don't have questions. So you're welcome to pitch in with the questions. We have a microphone, and the same goes for the rest of you. And while you think about those questions, let me just dive a bit more into the what you call the biggest potential to unlock and counter the public health through buildings. What would be the most critical health benefits that we could unlock through better building design and retrofit, to name a few?
Yeah, so there's probably not any health dimension that our buildings don't touch. There aren't any. But one I've been thinking a lot about and writing about it too is overall brain health. And this comes from the decisions we make in terms of the products we put in our spaces, the lighting, ventilation, air quality. But I think it's been missed a little bit in terms of the dimensions of brain health. So we know, for example, that buildings in the indoor environment influence mental health. We see studies on kids, for example, showing a link between indoor air quality and anxiety, depression, suicide ideation. We see links between the indoor environment and these neurodegenerative diseases. So a link between pollutants in particular and Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and even links with autism related to outdoor air pollution and particle pollution. So this is all linked through brain health at all stages of the life course. And then some of my own work at Harvard looking at the link between indoor air quality and cognitive function performance. So not just neurodegenerative diseases or mental health, but also our ability just to function in an environment like this and be sharp and be on top of tasks. So we find a link between indoor air quality and higher order cognitive function. So, I think we're talking about healthy buildings, IEQ, but actually this is like, if you think about these one dimension, just brain health, all the way through the life course, and we see these impacts. And I think it starts to put a human dimension on just how powerful and important these indoor spaces are to our health. And that's just one dimension, right? We do the same thing for heart health, lung health, reproductive health, but that's just brain health.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite mind-blowing, thinking about it this way. Are there a couple of health-focused building standards that we could prioritize, which would lead to a bigger public health impact that you would point towards?
I would think of, well, one's a standard, one's I just think where we should be going personally. One, I think globally we have so choked off the air supply in our buildings. With lack of natural ventilation, lack of airflow, we've really walled ourselves off from nature entirely, except in a building like this. And I think these standards are driving a lot of the illness and sick. I respond to sick building calls every single week. And a lot of them are fundamentally because of the way we've designed these kind of low ventilation, low filtration, poor indoor environment, largely through lack of airflow, like absolute basics. You know, why do you feel good when you're outside with fresh air? There's a lot of fresh air, right? So, and we all know this. It's intuitive. We don't need studies to show it, but we have studies that show that. So I think that's one. I think the standards are designed for bare minimums. They're not designed for health. I think very few people realize that outside of people in this room who study this. So that's one. The second one is gets back to something you've been saying, Lona, is on this measurement piece. And so, you know, it's the classic business maxim, you manage what you measure. And we don't measure indoor environmental quality performance, at least not well. And we try. But I think the advent or the proliferation of kind of lower cost new technologies around indoor air quality monitoring is changing that. So all of a sudden, we now have data sets. Like we have a data set we're working on at Harvard that has, I don't know, a couple 10,000 homes that we have the live indoor air quality data on. And we've never had access to that. But it's the first time you can say, okay, here's what, talking about benchmarking. How would you benchmark even just 5 years ago? I don't know, we have a study here, a study there. Now we're starting to get these massive data sets that tell us, well, this is how buildings are performing. And we have something to benchmark against. So I'm a big proponent of ventilation standards, but also measurement, like just forced measurement, because if you measure it, you're going to find problems. We see this. Maybe you'll find spaces are just great, and then you know how to diagnose it and fix it.
Excellent. Thank you for this answer. I can't help but actually jumping to you, Ditte, talking about design. Like Joe did, the design of our buildings, and you also are chair of the Danish Design Council. Would you have some perspectives to share on the design part? How could this be unlocked through design in the broader sense? Service design, healthcare design, all the dimensions of design, not talking about how a glass or a cup or a piece of furniture looks.
No, and I think that's a core part of good design, looking at the broader context. And I think a lot goes back to what you were saying with the human element and looking at it from a human perspective and that broader context. And I think that there are so many great opportunities to use design. One, when you talk about health, a key challenge now is moving from the relative CO2 to the absolute CO2. That's how big a unit we live in per person. At the same time, we know that there are, in our cities in particular, but in general, there are way more people living alone. Yet at the same time, our buildings are not built for singles, they're built for multiple people. So how do we start designing our cities in a new way that creates the value on fewer square meters and at the same time deliver a crucial piece on in particular mental health, but broader health perspectives as well. And I think that comes down to a design perspective of looking less on the individual unit and more on the broader system that it needs to play a part in our society.
Because design is where something technical meets the human.
Yeah, and it's where we start. I think it's, we've had climate science been really great at telling us all the things that we need to move away from. Design is that ability to question what we come from, all of the things we take for granted as naturals that are social constructs, and that goes very much to the built environment, and then start really giving shape to the things that we don't yet know, and how it might be that success isn't measured in how many square meters you can afford to buy. It's the a smaller unit that might be even more value creating than before, but we need those success stories out there, so it becomes less about technology and more about culture and really creating that new demand and desire.
Yes, sounds excellent. I will not torture you with the question why buildings are designed without humans in mind. I might ask Klaus from DTU about that later, but don't worry, I won't do that now. I'll jump to you, Marcel, to ask you for, now that we're looking at, actually, the future is already built, most of Europe's building stock is already here, and how can we make retrofit projects that are not just technically possible, but how can it be attractive and supportive to people living in their homeowners or renters?
That's a challenging part, I have to say. I mean, there are good examples of how it works, but I'm back to the human. I think we need to take the humans with us and show them what are the benefits of the retrofit of the building. And following up on what Ditte said, I think if we renovate buildings and people come from, let's say, 80 square meters and we say, okay, now you have 60 square meters, I think the first reaction would be, oh no, that I'm losing here. So I think we need to convince them somehow to make them understand, I'm back to comprehensibility here, what are the benefits of this renovation for them? How does it improve their way of living? How does it improve the way they can interact with the building? So we definitely shouldn't reduce options they have to control the building. But that's, I would say, the occupants later living in the building. If they would be the ones who decide what to do with the building and everything else would be smoothly, then that's the only thing we need to do. But we know that it's not happening. Even if we have very motivated people who want to renovate their house, then they start searching an architect, searching craftsman. All these change coming later, even if people understood it's important to renovate my house, they're far from really doing it and able to do it. And I think there it's a big challenge we all have to deal with and see how can we make this more pleasant for people also to renovate their house. That they say, I want to have this new, I want to have this healthy, please do it for me. And not, okay, who do I ask first? How do I get a painter? How do I get this and this and this? I would say there are many people out there who would like to do something in their houses, but they are just stuck with problems in there.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Could you see a way to make retrofit programs like incentives? There's a lot of this in Germany. I know you are maybe the European champion on incentives and loans.
But we are not the champions in renovating, I think, still,
Well,
despite all the
said
incentives.
That. I didn't say that, you said that.
Yeah.
But you might be right. But still, given that, then, that you may be having a gap to cover in like Germany,
yeah.
what would be a retrofit program that would meet this without sacrificing affordability?
I mentioned this affordability before because I have a very crude suggestion here. I'm not sure if you would like it, but if we consider, and I think we are in line there, that we'd want to do preventive measures to prevent health issues of people. So why don't we target all this budget which is there for prevention, or even the budget which is there for researching and how to cure people, transfer it to how to prevent diseases and with buildings. I think I'm from academia here. I know that it's maybe a dream I have, but if we consider all this money which is in our health system, and we can steer a bit of that to say, okay, we use that to make our buildings preventive of diseases, be it mental, be it cardiovascular, be it other diseases. I would say we don't have a problem of budget. We then have a problem of how to put it into place. Yeah. So that would be my program. Take it from curing diseases, which of course is necessary, but if we can prevent it, we would save in the long term.
So getting to the root causes of what is a lot of the sicknesses. That reminds me of when I first started traveling in China. I saw institutes for health, and I thought, what is that? That is what we call in Danish a sick house, but they call it Institute for Health. Well, I thought that was quite clever. So, would you disagree completely to what Marcel
No,
said?
actually, I think it's totally aligned, and not surprisingly, and it ties into my opening comment. I think part of the challenge, and probably what our responsibility is, to make that connect those dots for people, such that, and government leaders, other stakeholders, that ultimately the decisions around the buildings will determine not just the health of the person in the building, but the population health, planetary health. That's actually going to drive the economic agenda. There's a big study in the U.S., for example, that says if we just improve indoor air quality in homes, there's a $20 billion economic benefit. So if we start taking this, hopefully it can unlock some funds. If you make the strong enough case, the why we care, you can unlock some of these prevention funds and say, oh, the buildings is not just about having a nice space that looks great. This is actually about people's health, and actually is going to save a lot of money across all sectors and levels of the economy. The big challenge, though, I'm in a school of public health. He described public health. So where does all the money go? It goes to medicine after people are sick. Public health is a hard time getting money because prevention, you can't prove it. It's a famous saying, when public health works, nothing happens. That's a good thing, but it's hard to prove that, right? You need that, the counterfactual, and we don't always have that. But I think it's spot on, and ultimately it's aligned with my comment about, driving this multiple benefits. Say this is big, economic. This ties across all sectors of the economy to unlock those funds, to say this becomes an even bigger priority than we had thought. I think a lot of people think of buildings as this small thing, or indoor quality as a small thing, but it's a massive thing.
Indeed it is, and it should be given way more attention, which I know a lot of you are working to enhance. Do we have questions? Yes, we do, from the capacity also on healthy buildings. Sergio Altomonte.
Thank you very much, Lone. Thank you to Joe, to myself, to Dita for the panel and the discussion. Sergio Altomonte from the Catholic University of Louvain in Belgium. I had a few questions. I'll try to condense them, but my point was starting from the very concept of affordability that has been mentioned before already. And my line of thought is that what is actually affordability? Is that something that we mean for the individual or for the collectivity? Because they may actually be in contradiction. So affordability for an individual may actually imply that we compromise on certain qualities or characteristics that actually then moved on to the collectivity may imply a much larger cost that is then impacting on societies. So I think that first of all we have to reflect on what we mean by affordability. But the other thing on which I wanted to really put the emphasis is, we've been discussing about renovation and retrofit of buildings and so forth, but we maybe forget the ultimate and most important thing. So Marcel said that, actually, and I agree, we need buildings that people can comprehend. But do we comprehend the people? The buildings that we're now retrofitting and renovating were built at an age where the life requirements and style and so forth were completely different from what we have today. And we're actually just scrapping the surfaces of understanding what is living today. I'm an architect, and I can tell you that at the moment, the most difficult thing to understand is what is a home. Because a home can be a place where you cook, where you meet your family, your household and so forth, and you go to sleep. But it could be an office, could be a gym, could be a place for social interaction, could become actually a place for home care for the elderly. My father is 85 years old. He barely leaves the home, and I'm actually sure that actually makes him feel even worse, because of course the home is not designed to make him feel better. And that goes to my the actual question. In the retrofit and renovation program that we are doing, should we try really to change the approach that we've had so far in terms of the design? We've been designing for years, decades, based on standards that we're trying to achieve a generalized model of comfort, which is an average, it's a mean. Should we forget that because we know that comfort is unhealthy? And I don't want to refer to the cake that we've just eaten, which was very good, very comfortable, but So knowing that comfort is unhealthy, comfort requires a huge amount of energy. Should we refocus our renovation on people and primarily on their health? Thank you.
Who would like to
I'll
start?
take a shot at it because I agree with parts of it, and we've been talking about this over the past couple of days. But I'll tell you, years ago, we released this report called The 9 Foundations of a Healthy Building. And, in our field, we talk about thermal comfort. And I was adamant that I would not write the word thermal comfort on this. We called it thermal health for that reason. But some of what you're talking about, but to capture the larger issue around temperature and just being comfortable, but actually just driving home the point that these things are actually about health. Because I think in my space, coming from the sick building investigations for 20 years, the people are often blamed for whatever happens in the space. So, you're just uncomfortable. Oh, you're a complainer. You're just uncomfortable with the temperature. But actually, it's a health issue. It becomes a health issue. And I agree with you on that. So the language we're using is sometimes designed to kind of maybe hide the problem. Oh, it's just a comfort thing. It's not. Well, you have to be comfortable. You have to be safe. Yes, but also, are we really talking about this language in terms of driving health? So just one example of where I totally agree with you. I hate the term thermal comfort. I just hate it. I know it's used in our field, but I like thermal health. I just want to get rid of that. Our goal is just comfort. I think we can go way beyond comfort.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you
I
very
can
much. And thanks for the question, Sergio. I didn't say that.
I can continue with another point. I agree, if you want to go first.
Did
I can. I think on the language around it, there's this importance that we don't sort of take for granted that what we've been doing so far, even though we call it comfort, has been about people's comfort. There's been so many other agendas at play. So what we do in the future, how we frame the language about renovation and retrofitting really needs to be about creating that value for people, but being super ambitious about that. And that can be about challenging what comfort means to us, but I would be very hesitant to remove the ambition of people being comfortable in buildings, because I think it goes more to how do we ensure that we actually built for people, and question and challenge that has been the driving force for how we built for quite a while, going back to that sort of innovation by remembrance, remembering why we built, and the opportunity that affordability and the affordability agenda from the political perspective really gives in as a reminder of what is the purpose of building, which is a sort of a broader question, but I think it's a fair question to ask, because for quite a while the majority of the buildings that have gone up has not had at the core of their purpose to build for people. It's been to build for profit, and I think we need to rebalance that.
pension funds?
Yeah.
Thanks. Marcel?
Yeah. I want to say I agree with the point that, I'm not sure if you said the point, but I think you also believe we don't comprehend the people. And I want to say, even after many years of research, I think we cannot claim that we comprehend all about them, why they do certain things and why they like certain things and don't like other things. And that, I would say, an argument again for my point of manageability. We need to give the people opportunities to manage the place, to choose the situations, the conditions they want to have. At the same time, we also need to tell them what conditions, or not tell them, but make them experience and show them what conditions are good for them. And I think we, as a human organism, we have a sort of strive towards comfortable conditions, because that's where we are in, let's say, energy balance with our surrounding. And it's good to have that at certain points, but we need to make clear that this constant notion of comfort all the time, which now the standards, and not only the standards, media and everyone suggests that that's the perfect thing. We need to make people aware that's not. That this dynamics we need to get the so-called out of the comfort zone at any times, to appreciate what's comfort again, and to make our body, our physiological system learn what it means. Also our mental system learn what it means to have success, to deal with the stressor. It's a very strong driver, and not to, wait, okay, what happens? What does the building do to me? So convince people to have a more active role a bit and to explore what is good for them and then give them the opportunity to do that, no matter what it is. At some point, we of course get then into some discussions. Is it justified that one person loves to be in winter in Denmark in his living space in shorts and t-shirt and having the living room at 28-degree heated? Then we get into resource discussions. But I would say from the human point of view, we would say, well, if that's what the person wants, we need to give the person the option, but maybe at a certain cost the person has to pay.
Yeah, that's an interesting discussion. Kasper, you have a question. The microphone is sneaking up to you. Anna Nectaria, thank you.
It was just in regards to, we talk about human health all the time as it is separate from, or at least we say, how do we optimize for human health in our buildings? But there is no human health in a sick planet, which we are really entering. So we are going to enter into some sort of domain where we have to decide what are the actual, how do we get there with the lowest possible environmental threshold. And for me, for a very long time, it's been about sort of developing a taking a technological way of trying to make it more complex. We solved it with this technology, but isn't it time to say, how can we deliver on these HPIs at the lowest possible ecological threshold? Isn't this is where we need to go? Because I think I am fearful that we are running into sort of the same wall we've been running into for like the last all industrialization, is that we're trying to solve a problem with the same thinking that caused the problem instead of sort of really reimagining what a healthy building means.
Thank you, Kasper. That reminds me of a publication called The Innovation of Nothing, which you co-authored, Anne. The book you have published, revelation to me, innovation is not always about adding, or in the past it is, proves that innovation, but then we add something. But it's actually the art of subtraction. Sorry. To Kasper's question?
I could comment on that because I fully agree with the point. And I think it's coming back to the question of sufficiency. And several people criticize me of mentioning sufficiency because they think I use it in order to reduce chances of people to achieve some comfort. In this thinking that comfort is the non plus ultra we want to get there. But as I see and I interpret sufficiency as really to rethink what do we really need to be happy, to have our life, have a good life, and reduce as much as possible what we need there. It's a bit of a mental mindset also. It's a bit what, let's say, all these YouTubers and others, I'm not that much into others, what they pretend is good for our life, what makes it happy. I was saying this morning, there's a nice page collecting the commercials from the 1970s, 80s of American HVAC industry. That's gorgeous, how they connect this, sorry to say, stupid device with the American dream, with a happy family life. And that's, I think, where we got to, that now this is the public thinking that if you have this comfort, you have a good life, and that's what you need. And I think it's a challenge to show people maybe you don't need these 400 square meters as a couple with a fully air-conditioned space all the time and 3 cars in the garage or so at that time. You can be happy without it. But there are some, I would say, people who argue against it and say, okay, you just want to reduce people the chances to have all of this.
Thank you. Marcel, it reminds me, there's a Coldplay song, you get what you want, but not what you need, I think. There's a phrase from it. Ditte, you had an input?
Yeah, no, I think it's both sort of from a broader perspective, but also from a very tangible perspective. If you look at the challenge of Europe right now, there is no way of solving that without taking that approach. The problem on so many levels are too big, so I think it's really what we need to learn and help each other do. How do you find that sweet spot between what needs to happen and then how can we use as little resources as possible? And that requires a new mental framework. It also requires a new approach to standards and all of these definitions that we have, which is but I think the opportunity is that for several reasons, it's the only way we can deliver what's needed in Europe for both renovation but also affordability. So it will have to happen.
Thanks a lot for that input. Klaus, you had a question?
Thank you very much. All this sort of talk about ideals, it reminds me of a story of about Gandhi when he was a young politician. He was traveling around in Europe several months, and then at some point a journalist asked him, "So, what do you think about Western civilization?" And I said, that would be a good idea. So, back to the ideals. In Europe, in European Commission, the new European Bauhaus is a concept that has been so strongly associated with the green transition, of course, instigated by that. And of course, that builds on those three principles. It has to be beautiful, it has to be sustainable, and together. And this together, of course, also, I think, corresponds to what was previously mentioned about comprehension between actually the people who are going to live, not only in the buildings, but also in the surrounding space, to create the whole livability as a whole, and actually also understand thereby cultural diversity and all these things. So my question is, are there elements in the new European Bauhaus that we can use to sort of this reduction to practice, to borrow a term from IP? How do we actually go about to do this? Because I think there's a huge gap between all the nice things we really would like to achieve, and then of course, what can we actually do? And of course, there's a lot of constraints economically, policy-wise, and so on. But are there levers, are there ways we can use the European Bauhaus concept to open some of these conundrums or dealing with these issues? Thank you.
Thank you, Klaus. Joe, I won't pester you with the new European Bauhaus. I think I will turn to you, Dita, because you have been heavily involved also in the Danish bit.
Yeah.
Before I do that, I have to brag a little. Sorry for that. But Living Places is a finalist at the new European Bauhaus prizes in 10 days. Yeah. We will see if it happens. But would you talk to what are the usable or what can we gain from this initiative, which is, as I understand it, has gotten new momentum?
Yeah. So I think a place to start, not just because it's also part of what I represent, blocks up being a sort of anchor for the Danish desire. But I think the fact that the project is called Desire is crucial in that it brings in culture to really help create not just desirable objects in what we understand desire to be today, but to really help challenge that mindset and that structure in which we need to create the future. So going back to, we can't just optimize on the existing, we really need to find new ways of doing. And I think that's what the beauty of the new European Bauhaus, that has become a part of the political agenda, the understanding that we need culture isn't just nice, it's neat, and creativity of finding new ways of doing is absolutely at the core. And then that it requires collaboration and co-responsibilities is something that we're exploring more and more. How is it that we get that collaboration going where there's a lot of public stewardship, as we see with the new European Bauhaus, but then it needs to be about structuring and aligning for so many different actors coming into play and playing the role of doing what they do best, but orchestrate towards the same goal, which I think new European Bauhaus delivers greatly. Not exactly how the old Bauhaus was done, but it's what we see in the. So that's a side note.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much for the questions and for the inputs. And I'd like to go to the concluding round, which is really easy to ask you to comment on the role that industry leaders, like those here in the room, how could they turn the talks into tangible action? Action is a key word. Mention a change, either in policy, mindset, practice, what could make the biggest difference. So we sum that up into the one priority that you would like to point towards.
All right, I'll go first. So
Thanks.
Thanks, and maybe I'll tie together a couple threads into different questions. In terms of the priority, right? We've been talking about health, but I think there's some challenges. And I think the comment you made, I think, is important. And I think a lot of the people I've worked with have been sick in buildings. A lot of this has been due to 40 years of efforts to save energy at the expense of health indoors. I find it totally unacceptable if there's a building or a home that is super energy efficient where people get sick. Unacceptable. Equally unacceptable that we have buildings super healthy that ignore responsibility to the planet. So, and I think that's driven a lot of the sickness because the standards or these minimums largely been designed for energy only without health. So I think that's fundamentally where the breakdown is. I do think there's the challenge and the problem to overcome is something Sergio said around, or this question of affordability. So if I am looking for, there's a housing crisis, things are too expensive. I'm looking for a house for my family. Well, yeah, I care that it's one, I can afford it. It's got to be safe. Yeah, resilient to threats. I think about these things good, hopefully indoor air quality or something healthy. Probably not thinking about the carbon intensity. Probably not thinking about my responsibility to the planet. Maybe some. But so I think that's where that disconnect. If you're talking to the homeowner, well, this is a place that's safe. It's going to save you money. It's going to keep your family. That's probably all they care about while we pursue these kind of larger goals of saying, let's just make it the standard such that governments are demanding that, sure, we're going to get you that safe, affordable, healthy home. And yes, it's also going to be really good for the planet, but that's driven underneath it at no extra cost to you. But I think that, to me, that's where this collision is happening, where you see like the goals, the lofty goals. Sometimes our decisions around energy cost health. Sometimes our costs around health cost energy, hurting us in other ways, and ultimately not really addressing the affordability crisis because we're just not delivering a product that's good and meets all of these, that's just affordable at the same time. So anyway, just to tie a couple threads, I see that as a problem that we have to unlock. So even in these frameworks we have, the sustainability one might be a different goal than actually what a homeowner cares about ultimately. And we just have to deliver what they care about, to your point. What do people want? Well, they want a handful of things, and we have to sometimes, and some people can't afford and want sustainability, but it can't be this premium they pay. I think that's the crisis or the crux of the problem, at least how I see it. I'm not sure I answered your question about how to solve it, but I think we have to get there to know what we're solving.
Yeah, so a good night's sleep.
That's what people want.
Yeah. not worrying and actually being the best version of yourself the next day. How can we unlock that? Thanks, Joe. Marcel, what would be your...
I think first of all, it's great to have these people here because I think we don't have time to really discuss along what should be priorities. Whatever we know would help, we probably need to start implementing it because we are getting to a situation where we can even say natural ventilation is nice, but in certain areas of this world, it will not work anymore. Fresh air outdoors is nice, but I was 3 weeks ago in a major Indian city. I had better air inside, I would have to say, than outside. So I think I'm afraid we are slowly losing the race for good solutions we had in the past. So I would say get into action, whatever you think is meaningful, what you can do in your area, what you can improve, and thereby reflect yourself. I mean, all of us here are humans. So reflect what you need, what you believe could help others in this situation. And then if we had this good sleep, maybe we can get to some innovative solutions which kind of target these sort of so far conflicting aims of having a sustainable company with, would say, creating less, putting into less products, but having this sort of business model which is sort of promoting benefit for humans and for all. Luckily, I'm not in this position to find the solution, but that would be my suggestion to do.
Oh, that we strive to do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marcel. And Ditte, you will have the last and final word.
No, I think my priority should be, I say it in a context of the European Union, but it goes beyond that. But I think the priority for me needs to be, we talk about affordability a lot right now because we had this bottom-up action. It's something that really matters to European voters, and we are a part of a democratic union with people coming from all over the union, and that really has a tremendous effect on what we are capable to do on so many levels, not least on what we can do from a systemic perspective on climate. So for several reasons, but particularly for that reason, what we need to really prioritize is finding ways of delivering on climate and affordability at the same time. And for me, that is really coming back to the renovation wave and looking at how do we unlock all of the square meters that are available within Europe today but are not utilized to deliver for people. That for me is it's not easy, but it's the least difficult, and it's something that could potentially be achieved within a relatively short time frame to deliver on that, because it's really at a crucial time where we need to take that affordability crisis extremely serious and ensure that it's aligned with the climate agenda, not on opposites, because quite quickly we could end up in a political situation where there wouldn't be a lot of opportunity to deliver on climate.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Give them all a hand.